Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can talk about the mental health and personality characteristics of David Icke. So David Icke, of course, is a real person, so I'm not diagnosing him or anybody else in this video, rather just speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. So Icke is a conspiracy theorist. He used to be an athlete and then a sports broadcaster. He was born in 1952 in England, and he lives in England now. We see that in 1990 he made these claims that a psychic told him he would receive messages from the spirit world. And he made his beliefs known, and this didn't end his career. We see that he went on to write books, has a massive social media presence, he gives seminars, although in some countries he's not allowed there anymore. In other venues he's been excluded from them. But he still gives a lot of seminars, and again he's very popular. In 1991 he was on the Terry Wogan show. And if you look at the whole episode, this time he spent on the show, he was kind of humiliated by Wogan. At one point Icke said a few things that were definitely outside of the norm, and the audience was laughing at him. Actually, this happened a few times. But this one particular time, Terry Wogan pointed out to David Icke that the audience was in fact laughing at him, not with him. Now, through this interview, David Icke seemed unfazed. He talked about how he could be a deity. He didn't really answer that question directly, but it seemed like he believed he was a deity. He was highly confident and essentially said that scientists don't know what they're doing. So I'll get into what his theories are in a moment, but during this interview he said he wasn't asking anyone to believe what he was saying. Yet, interestingly, of course, he was on the show, something that Terry Wogan pointed out. Why are you saying these things if you don't care if anybody believes or you don't expect anybody to believe? So it was a really interesting interview, and it did seem like kind of a pivotal point where after something like that, you would think somebody would kind of abandon this idea, this conspiracy theory, or at least keep it private. But he didn't. It actually seemed to really energize him. And again, he kind of built a fairly large career from it. Now, David Icke has a lot of unusual beliefs. He believes that thinking creates an energy field, and that love, wisdom, and tolerance create a positive energy. He believes the universe has an infinite number of dimensions, and it works on what's called vibrational energy, something that evidently he made up. And I guess there can be both positive and negative types of vibrations. Now, he also believes in a reptilian race called the Archons, and they're from another dimension, but also from another galaxy. So it's not really clear exactly what he believes there. They're interdimensional, but yet they still have a physical location in our universe. So, again, maybe physics isn't a strong suit, but either way, he believes that these reptilians, who are 100% reptile, infiltrated the Earth through genetically modifying humans. So not physically. So nobody had to date an alien or anything, right? No human dated a reptile. But rather by manipulating DNA. So essentially these alien reptile humanoids would have been formed from a great distance away about 250,000 years ago. This is what he believes. Now, one might wonder why they don't look like hybrids between lizards and humans. Well, that's because conveniently they're also shape-shifting, so you can't really tell them apart from regular humans. Now, he refers to them as elite lizards or elite alien lizard humanoids, the Illuminati, or the Babylonian Brotherhood. Apparently, they fight each other, but not too much. Because they wouldn't want to destroy each other, they just want to cause a lot of negative energy to be created. So what we see in David Icke's philosophy is he's got this problem-reaction-solution theory, really a conspiracy theory, which is that problems are created by the lizard people, reactions are created by the public, who kind of say something must be done about these problems. Then the solution is offered by the lizard people again. So the lizard people create the problems, humans react, and then the lizard people solve the problems. This is the problem-reaction-solution conspiracy theory. So this manipulation by the lizard people is referred to as the New World Order. So the lizard people control the world. They create fear by causing war and other problems so that the Archons, again these 100% lizards that live somewhere else, some other galaxy, can feed off of negative energy. Now, this video again is about Icke and kind of his philosophy and what's going on with somebody like him. But I have some other thoughts about the lizard people that I'll add to the end of this video, because they really don't involve any science. So if you're just looking for the David Icke material, I'll go through that, and at the end I'll talk a little bit more about some questions I have about the lizard people. So essentially, for David Icke, this one conspiracy theory explains all other conspiracies. Anti-vaccination, the moon being a space station, the moon landings never have happened, and a bunch of other conspiracy theories that David Icke believes. He also believes that all leaders of countries are tied together. They have the same bloodline, from Sumerian kings and Egyptian pharaohs all the way to what we see now with like British prime ministers and American presidents. So really the alien reptile humanoids occupy positions of power throughout the world, and again their job is to create negative energy for the lizards that live far away in another galaxy. The lizard people use mind control, they control the government, they control the media. The alien reptile humanoids are becoming more effective because of the use of digital technology to monitor the activities of the humans. So evidently they can travel through interdimensional space, or at least affect DNA through interdimensional space, but they somehow just recently learned how to use their smartphone. The Archons can be defeated by peace, love, and a revolution of consciousness. So there's an upside to David Icke's conspiracy theory. Harmony is an energetic state that the Archons cannot feed off of, right? So if human beings create harmony, they will have destroyed the energy source for the Archons. So, as I've mentioned many times before, I find this to be a particularly interesting conspiracy theory. But where does it come from? Did David Icke invent it? The first known usage of the lizard people in terms of a conspiracy theory is thought to be in the late 20s, maybe the early 30s. We're not really sure. But it definitely was thought of before David Icke came up with a theory. But it's interesting because there's a lot of recent influences that could contribute to this conspiracy theory. It does seem like it's been heavily influenced by a number of factors, including movies and TV shows. So, for example, movies like They Live had aliens that came down and infiltrated, and you could only see them with special glasses. Miniseries like the miniseries V, which had lizards that invaded Earth. We see the X-Files, which had a lot of alien conspiracy theories. The movie and the TV series Stargate, which I think isn't really brought up a lot, but if you look at that movie and that TV series, it does seem to kind of tie in with a lot of alien contact and aliens controlling human beings. We see other movies like Independence Day, Men in Black, The Matrix, Godzilla, to some extent Star Trek, and in terms of the conspiracy theory specifically that David Icke has, I think Star Wars would be an influence. Because Star Wars had the Force and David Icke has love, which is like the Force. It unifies all life in the galaxy, right? So kind of an interesting parallel here between his theory and a lot of movies and television shows. Now, David Icke is both remarkable and unremarkable, right? So he's remarkable in some ways and not so much in others. He has organized this massive conspiracy theory, which is not really new. But what's remarkable here is that he's so productive, so active. He reads a lot, keeps up with the news. He talks about issues that are important currently. So he's been given a platform by many people in the media to promote his ideas. So his popularity has really reached this critical mass, where now he's almost taken a little bit seriously, again, by a lot of media outlets. I think they simply invite him to talk because he's popular and it's going to draw an audience. But this is an effective strategy for him. Again, he's kind of past that point. He would normally, with these beliefs, kind of be dismissed by the media, but instead, he seems to be embraced, at least some of the time. Compared to the Terry Wogan interview in 1991, David Icke seems much more convincing and organized now. And he has also convinced a large number of people and a diverse group of people. We see this survey that indicates about 4% of Americans believe in some part of David Icke's theories. He makes this claim that people that are attracted to him have an open mind, that he provokes thinking in people. I think what's so interesting about David Icke and the David Icke phenomenon is how people see different things when looking at the same evidence. Those who, like him, see someone who's courageous, brave, fearless, someone who stood up to the system that ridiculed him. He endured this punishment because of his lack of acceptance of the established order, and he makes this effort to create world peace and make the world a better place. People believe that he thinks in a manner that's more complex than anyone has ever thought before, that he's understood things that no one else can understand, that he has embarrassed people that have interviewed him because his thoughts are, again, so complex that those individuals simply couldn't understand his complexity. We see a lot of this with that Terry Wogan interview. People that support David Icke think that David Icke really made some incredible points during that interview, and that really Terry should be embarrassed by that. And we see that a lot of people believe that he's someone who says a lot of words, and these words make perfect sense. And this will kind of juxtapose against what I'm going to look at on the other side here. So others see someone who perhaps struggles with paranoia, delusions, hallucinations, narcissism, a lack of insight, perhaps is socially awkward and disconnected in many ways from meaningful relationships, and maybe struggles a little bit with reality testing. They also believe he says a lot of words, like the people who agree with him, but that his words don't make any sense at all. So again, you can see the same presentation, hear the same words, and people can believe totally different things. And I think this is really what makes David Icke special in some way. He's a polarizing figure that highlights this tendency in people. Also, I think he points out that sometimes the difference between success and failure is really just an unwillingness to give up. Right? By every other measure that we have of how people could be thought of as being successful or a failure in the future, every prediction method, David Icke should not be successful. So it doesn't really matter if what somebody's saying is nonsense. As long as they say it long enough, people will believe it. Icke also seems to have connected more with political topics lately, which I think has engaged a lot of people. We see that a lot of people are willing to forgive the nonsense and look at Icke's theories metaphorically. So they don't agree with him that there are literally lizard people among us, but they agree that the idea of alien lizard humanoids is an acceptable metaphor for what's going on in the world. It explains why people in power do bad things, and why the masses have trouble overcoming these people in power and making their voices heard and making change happen. So he has a popular message. It's one of nonviolence. It's one that says protests don't actually work. It's really just a message of non-compliance. So, popular message that can be, by some, interpreted metaphorically, which again gets around the whole lizard people problem. So this explains in part why he's popular, but there's really another important component to this. Among conspiracy theorists, when conspiracy theorists are looking for someone to look up to, and they're looking for a mentor, there aren't really a lot of good choices. The mental health and personality aspects of somebody who would have strong commitments to conspiracy theories are often not really consistent with the ability to function well, right? They get in the way of functioning. But as I mentioned, David Icke seems to be highly productive, relatively articulate, and seems to function well. So among the possible mentors, David Icke seems to look like a good choice. So what about the mental health and personality aspects? Well, again, I'm not diagnosing, just speculating on what could be happening in a situation like this. So with David Icke, we see a lot of different characteristics that have been thrown out there. This idea that he's talkative, that he knows something about every topic. We don't really ever see him respond by saying he doesn't have an opinion. He's relatively articulate. He seems to believe that he is a deity, specifically the Son of God. He seems to believe that there are alien lizard humanoids and a number of other conspiracy theories in play. He claims that he talks to experts and they agree with him, like experts in physics, for example, yet he dismisses scientists as being closed-minded. So again, moving back to this idea that people see what they want to see, they believe what they want to believe. We see a lot of confirmation bias at work here with David Icke. He has charisma, boundless energy, enthusiasm, a phenomenal work ethic. He doesn't really appear to have a well-developed sense of humor, seems socially awkward in social situations, but not anxious. He does seem to really enjoy public speaking. We see some evidence of ideas of reference. He refers to as connecting the dots, but really it seems, again, kind of like the ideas of reference. So he believes that events that have nothing to do with him actually do have something to do with him, and events that have nothing to do with one another are in fact connected. So essentially another characteristic we see with a lot of conspiracy theorists, this idea that nothing is random. They tend to see symbolism in everything, so everything means something. Everyday items are indications of the conspiracy. So for David Icke, ancient artwork, paintings, sculptures, ancient writing, in everything he sees lizard people and, again, other conspiracies. So he may have odd beliefs or magical thinking. He claims to be open-minded, but does not appear to be open to changing his mind, so really has inflexible thinking, rigid beliefs. Sometimes he appears a little disorganized, but at the same time, he has a lot of imagination and creativity and does organize that well at certain points. So the disorganized part is not really clear. We see that sometimes, but again, other times he seems like he really has things together fairly well in terms of his thoughts and how he's processing them. So from a mental health perspective, what could be going on in a situation like this? Well, nothing could be going on. This could all be an act, right? Both of those are possible. So nothing's going on in terms of mental illness, or this is something he thought of as a way to make a lot of money, and he has made a lot of money. There could also be some other tendencies we see, perhaps from cluster A personality disorders like paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal. Those are the three cluster A personality disorders. A lot of the different features that seem to be associated with his behavior do line up with some of the symptoms in cluster A. And we also see some alignment maybe with schizophrenia or other similar disorders. Now, in terms of a personality profile, it's kind of the same thing. You really have to meet somebody and assess them to know. But we can look at some of his behavior and kind of line it up with the 5-factor model. So openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. I remember this through the acronym OCEAN. So with openness to experience, he seems fairly high in openness to experience, but he's split on the facets. So like high in imagination and fantasy and those type of areas, but he does have rigid thinking, which is not consistent with high openness to experience. If in fact he does have psychoticism, that of course would be consistent with high openness to experience. With conscientiousness, interestingly, I think he has very high conscientiousness. At least, again, his behavior seems to line up with that. Extroversion also seems split. He has high assertiveness, but he's not particularly friendly or gregarious, and we don't even really see a lot of evidence of positive emotions. With agreeableness, we see that he seems to have very low trust, which is really a key for conspiracy theorists. We see this a lot, conspiracy theorists. But with other agreeableness traits, it's not really as clear. I mean, with straightforwardness, he does seem to be relatively straightforward, like he believes what he's saying is true, so it wouldn't be indicative of low straightforwardness. In terms of neuroticism, this appears to be low. He's not easily shaken or discouraged. He doesn't seem to have a lot of strong emotional reactions. So what's the summary here for David Icke? Well, he's an interesting guy. He's connected with a group of people that may feel disconnected or frustrated by things that are happening in the world, but his theories are generally nonsense, of course. He delivers them in a way that make them seem credible. He uses a lot of technical terminology from science, but really, again, it's just dressed up nonsense, right? So there's no scientific foundation to what he's saying. As far as valuing what he says metaphorically, I can understand how some people might see that, but I guess I get stuck with the whole lizard thing, and really the anti-vaccination and all the other conspiracy theories that he believes in. David Icke does the same thing we see with a lot of conspiracy theorists. He has one of the typical lines, which is if you confront a conspiracy theorist and you say what they believe is not true, they simply say that you're part of the conspiracy. So logically speaking, they kind of get trapped in this circle, right? There's no way to escape it. So there's no way to introduce new evidence for consideration. So, as I mentioned before, David Icke appears to be a flexible, open-minded thinker, but he's not really. He's closed off. nothing's going to change his mind. No amount of evidence would change his mind. At least that's what appears to be happening. So those are my thoughts on the David Icke situation. I also have some other general thoughts, as I talked about before, on alien lizard humanoids. And as I talked about, this is one of my favorite topics, one of my favorite delusions that comes up, because it's just really not supported by any evidence. With other conspiracy theories, you can see grains of truth in the conspiracy theory, but with the alien lizard people thing, you just don't see any of that. So some of my thoughts here, specifically to David Icke's take on the alien lizard people. So the Archons were not blended genetically with humans, right? The original lizards were 100% lizard, and again were on a planet in a galaxy far away, right? Thousands of light years away. Do these Archons like the shape-shifting lizard humanoids that are on Earth? Can the lizard humanoids on Earth visit the galaxy where the Archons are from, which I think David Icke says is Alpha Draconis? This is where the Archons live. Can they visit? Can they travel out there and like see distant relatives? I don't know how that works. Do the Archons complain to the lizard people on Earth about the negative energy levels getting too low? Do they say like, hey, we can't keep the lights on in the factories, make more of that negative energy, right? Do they report to the lizard people with these different grievances? Have the Archons ever considered alternative energy, solar, wind, nuclear, coal, something other than negative energy? They seem highly dependent on negative feelings to, I guess, power their appliances? Or what about a power inverter? So has any Archon ever thought, like Archon scientists, have they thought, hey, can I convert positive energy into negative energy, therefore it doesn't matter what the humans create? Or have they considered simply switching their appliances and cars and everything else over to run on positive energy? So it seems like the Archons are technically very advanced, but don't apply what they've learned, right? They're not really advancing their own science. They seem stuck and just fixated on the negative energy of humans, right? Just seems like a tough place to be. Maybe the Archons just need a little bit of counseling, right, to break free of some of their inflexible thinking. I don't know. Those are just some of the thoughts. This is what I think about when I think about the lizard people. I don't know why I find this to be so funny. Well, I kind of have a reason. I've talked about that before, but either way, it just strikes me as kind of funny, and there's so many directions to break apart this alien lizard people conspiracy theory, right? You can go anywhere. You can walk in any direction, and you'll trip over a reason why this theory is not true. It's not hard to come up with these different rebuttals against this particular theory, but either way, those are my thoughts. So I know whenever I talk about conspiracy theories like David Icke, there's always going to be a variety of opinions, people who agree with me or disagree with me, who have other thoughts about this subject matter. Please put those opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They're really sure to generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found this description of David Icke and conspiracy theories to be interesting. Thanks for watching.